You're listening to Trysteropod episode 4. I'm David Kulma, and the other guy is Dorian Wallace. We're musicians who talk about music and apparently politics from a left-wing perspective. So what do you want to talk about today, Dorian?
Well, it was interesting, dude. I went to Todd Reynolds' house this weekend, and he's a super badass violinist, composer, electronic musician, and overall just like really cool guy. Anyways, I actually wanted to change the subject because that was what we initially talked about, but you've been analyzing a piece called Schoenberg Dreaming.
Yes.
And I'm like actually way more interested in hearing about this first.
Okay, well here I'll tell you the story as I know it.
Yeah.
So it's by Toby Twining. Toby Twining's well known for a couple of records. I think at least one of them's on Cantaloupe Records. The one is his Chrysalid Requiem, which is this extremely elaborate microtonal in just intonation, that is, all the notes are related by harmonic series relationships to create extremely resonant and gorgeous soundscapes. The other one is there's another one that I really like called Eurydice. It was originally written for a play to go with a play that it's just basically tells the old Orpheus myth. It's really gorgeous music. Anyway, he apparently wrote a solo cello piece for a cellist who decided not to play it because it was basically impossible to play. And there's a local Cleveland area musician these days. She went to Juilliard and Eastman. Her name is Melina Rauschenfels. I was talking with her yesterday, and she was telling me some of these stories. And so she knew Toby because she was dating the guy who was like his music director that helped make those recordings. And he was in Toby Twining Music, the ensemble that sang those things. And anyway, they apparently happened to meet Toby on a train platform going in opposite directions, and Melina just was wanting to play a different cello piece that Toby had written, so she wanted to talk to him about it. And he apparently is like, oh, well, no one's ever played that. And he pulls out this Schoenberg Dreaming piece, and she's like, well, no, I've heard the other piece. So he pulled out he apparently had on him a completely different solo cello piece. It's a really strange story. Anyway, she's really close with Toby. And
very cool.
So she's since recorded this piece in her solo album that she put out in 2017. And she was going to show me the score, but she forgot because it's like color coded and it's in Ben Johnston's microtonal notation, which means that everything has like ridiculous number of accidentals, and being for a regular musician to interpret it is almost impossible. So there was so they made a performing version, which it's basically, I've been emailing with Kyle Gann, and Kyle, I just mentioned that I was looking at this, and he emailed me the PDF of the performing score because of course he had it. This is just the life I have. So I've been analyzing it today, and so the basic idea is this. When you're dealing with just intonation music, all of the pitches and the intervals between them, that is how they relate, are all the way they sound the prettiest is if those numbers are very small. Like an octave is called a 2/1, 2/1. And but Toby is using such elaborate pitch relationships in an effort to do apparently something to do with what it would be like if Schoenberg was asleep and dreaming in his crazy musical universe, that he's using relationships like the seventh harmonic, which is something that's not on the piano. It really sounds amazing if you ever hear that sound. And he's using that to base some of the pitch relations, but he's not staying on any kind of grid because it's a cello and you can put your finger anywhere you want. So by literally the third line, the piece is about 7 minutes long. This is in the first minute. you're already at a level where you're dealing with let me read one of the ratios. So the third note on the third line of this, it's notated as an E natural that's going to be 7.1 cents below the E in equal temperament. The number I got for it was 295,245 over 235,298. And they get worse.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's even a point on like one of the later pages where the cellist is asked to play two versions of D in a row, one of which is 18 cents higher than equal temperament, and the other is 17 cents higher. So 18 cents higher, and the next one is 17 cents below.
Wow.
So that's a difference of like 30 cents.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think I did the math wrong. It's more like it's closer to 35 or 40
Wow.
cents. Yeah.
Wow.
So so apparently Melina was explaining to me how she learned it. Which because she doesn't read the notation, so she's regular music notation. So she got a Sibelius file that had all of the pitch bends in it. And she slowed it down to like quarter note equals 1.
Oh my god.
And slowly learned the piece by matching the pitch of the MIDI. And then slowly increase the tempo. That's
kind of disgusting in the most amazing way possible.
Oh yeah, it's amazing results. I don't. Well, here's the thing: is that just intonation is usually used to make chords sound really good. And so it's easier to hear the pitch relationships because you're just tuning more precisely than you would in other circumstances. That's really all it ends up being. And some of the notes are different than usual. But they're hearable relationships. This is almost all melodic. I mean, there are some double stops. But you're having to be able to figure out some of these crazy-ass intervals from note to note rather than simultaneously. So it becomes even more complex. But just so you know, I mean, like the first 3 lines, that's already 13 discrete different pitches.
Wow.
But there are at least 5 or 6 in the next like 8 notes. I mean, there's a fucking sequence in here. That's a sequence that, by the way, everybody, is where you take a musical idea and you just repeat the same idea and go starting a little bit higher. And the first statement starts on 29.8 cents below an A, and the next statement starts 24.6 cents below an A sharp. And then there's another statement, like it's just like the relationships are so complicated. I don't have any idea how Melina figured how to do it, but you can go listen to the recording. It's very good. So
yeah, I just posted a link for the YouTube video.
She apparently premiered at Bang on a Can Festival in the Banglewood. She attended that one summer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
not surprised at all.
Yeah. No, she's a monster. She actually spends most of her time these days doing extremely theatrical Baroque performance. That's for her group called the Burning River Baroque. I've reviewed a couple of times. It's one of the most.
You're kidding.
It's one of the most amazing theatrical experiences I've ever seen in my life. The kind of stuff she does. It's
wow.
Anyway, but
yeah, and she's living in Ohio now.
Yeah. She lives in Cleveland, Cleveland area. She bought a house here years ago, and I'm not going to give it up. I guess.
Yeah.
Whether moving to Cleveland is a very strange choice. I know I've made that decision.
I mean, it's up in the air possibly for Heinel and I. I mean,
really?
not really, but we're looking at other places other than New York.
Well, if you want to move a place that's inexpensive in comparison to everywhere else and still actually has culture, Cleveland is basically that place.
Yes.
Everywhere else is too expensive.
Yeah.
Or everybody's too close together.
Right. What does the piece actually sound like? If you could describe it,
Oh, like, sure. Okay.
I'm definitely going to listen to this after.
Yeah. So so imagine if you were trying to dream like a Well, you went to go hear a Vartung recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of universe, except all the pitches are closer together.
Okay.
So it just like, imagine if you were like, if Edvard Munch's Scream, you were like in that kind of a universe in your sleep. But it wasn't like screaming. It was just sort of like the way the colors move. Mm-hmm. It's really, it kind of slowly, it's like it's constantly shifting landscape of relationships as opposed to, it's not very square, let's put it that way. Because there's no time signature. It's all just like sort of causally free.
Yeah. So I don't really know Toby Twining. Is that his name?
Yeah. Twining.
Yeah. I don't know his music really at all, but I'm checking his website out, and right off the bat, he's got a Kyle Gann quote that says, "Twining's approach is truly weird and brilliant."
Oh yeah.
Which I trust the fuck out of Kyle.
So Dorian, if if you're going to listen to one thing, let me make a recommendation.
Yes, please do.
It's called, there's a movement, there's a chunk of Eurydice called something Down into Hell. Let me look it up.
Toby Twining, Down into Hell.
Looking it up. I mean, I have the recording. Let's see. Look here. Okay. Okay, that's not helpful. Welcome to all the wonderful dead air, everybody. We're not going to edit this out.
Nope.
Because that would require work.
This might actually be a good time to mention. So he's signed to Cantaloupe Records, which I believe Todd is also signed.
Right, of course. The Cantaloupe's owned by the Bang on a Can composer trio.
Right.
So it's the one called, is it Orpheus at the Gates? I'm going to just listen to it. You won't hear it. I will. For a second. Nope. Okay, that was going to play out of the computer, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, that would be, yes, that one. Orpheus at the Gates.
Yeah. Are you able to post a link for that? Or?
Yeah, sure. I will.
Yeah. Great. So check out some of this shit, y'all.
Anyway, do you want us to talk anything more about Todd?
Well, no, it just his stuff looks very interesting. Raised in Texas with family roots in country, swing, and gospel, Toby Twining has traveled musically from playing for rock and jazz bands to experimental composition at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
He studied with Ben Johnston, although apparently he didn't write any microtonal music while he studied with Ben.
Okay.
Did it afterwards.
And it's where he earned his bachelor's in music composition in 1985. In the mid-'80s, he became intrigued by the vast potential of the human voice and delved into a broad spectrum of musical techniques, including Renaissance madrigals, scat, African yodeling, and Mongolian throat singing.
And all of those things happen in his music, by the way.
Yeah, I'm already digging him just by description alone.
Oh yeah.
The discovery of his own vocal range and performance talents pulled these influences together for Twining and guided him toward an emphasis on composition for a cappella ensembles. Very cool.
Yeah. No, it's.
So wait. He writes this shit for a cappella groups?
Oh yeah. Well, so some of it's so elaborate that they have to they need to have the Crystal Requiem was performed by them. They're listening to the pitches in each singer had their own pitches in their ear, mic'd into their whatever. So they're monitored in headphones, and then they would sing their part during live performance. It's apparently hell to perform, but it meant that you got all the chords really nice.
Yeah.
No, Dorian, it's some of the most amazing music I know.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess I'm going to go into talking about Todd Reynolds from this weekend. So first off, Todd is just a cool motherfucker. I don't know. He's like an old guru who an old guru of modern music. He knows everyone in the fucking business, which I can't believe I just said that after David and I just had to talk about not referring to our job as business or industry.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, he knows everybody in the scene.
Sure.
You know, he knows Steve Reich, he knows John Zorn, he knows Anthony Braxton, he knows the entire Bang and a Can crew, and he's a great violinist. He's also one of the founders of Ethel, the string quartet. Just, you know, overall just very brilliant violinist, but he's also a composer, and he's really a master in electronic music. Specifically, I think really all of them, but Ableton was what I went up to go with my wife. We went to his house for the weekend to learn little bits about Ableton. And first and foremost, you know, have you ever used Ableton before, David?
No, I have not.
Yeah, so it is an intense program for novices. It seems like the possibilities are absolutely endless with what you're able to do. And keep in mind, you know, this is an ocean of knowledge, and I basically walked into, you know, a foot deep. Like, I haven't even started wading yet.
So let me ask a clarifying question. So
sure.
What does Ableton allow you to do?
Oh, boy.
Well, like not like specifics, but like what's the general purpose of this software?
Well, it's a performance-based software. You can use it for recording and all of those sorts of things, but the real purpose of Ableton is to use electronic music in a live setting, meaning you can sample yourself, you can control the lighting around you, you can improvise with a recording that you set yourself up with, you can do loops, you can create click tracks that go into the headphones of performers, so they get the click track while any of the other electronic tracks are going out through the house speakers.
So it's basically any way that you can think of having a computer augment live performance, it'll do.
Yes, and it's used by everyone.
Oh yeah, like literally everybody.
Like, yeah, like if you're the next wave, you know, vaporwave live DJ, you're probably using Ableton.
Oh yeah, they're definitely using Ableton. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable some of the things that were going on. One that blew my mind. We did this exercise where Heinel recorded 2 octaves of a chromatic scale. She plays violin, but she went 2 octaves up a chromatic scale, starting with G, and it was like, I think, playing a whole note for each 4 beats with a click track, and then
there's a chromatic scale
David
example
just played.
For you. Yeah.
What David just played. But then my assignment for that day was to take the pitches that she had played and convert them to MIDI tracks, and then map them to my USB keyboard. And basically, I got to play with Heinel as my instrument.
Oh yeah, nice.
You know, it was surreal. Like,
you basically sampled her, right?
Yes. Oh no, that's all it was. But it was one of those, like, as a person who's played string synth for
string synths suck in comparison to a
20 years.
Actual sounds made by a human,
right?
That you're then able to manipulate. Yeah.
Well, and the other factor was you could change the velocity. So based on how hard I pressed the key, it actually affected the sound that was coming out of the sampled string sounds.
Oh, nice.
And keep in mind, this is like basic level stuff. You know, the thing I'm actually really interested in the most is creating completely brand new synthesizer sounds for my own library of friends. You know, hang out with Paul Pinto, record some stuff he can do. Hang out with Heinel Pivnik, record stuff she can do. Mix them together, create a Heinel Paul patch.
Right.
that can then be improvised on a synth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person in me who's taught introduction to music technology wants to make a distinction between a sampler and a synthesizer, because a synthesizer takes electronic sounds and makes new sounds that you wouldn't exist without the computer electronic technology. Whereas a sampler, which is the thing that really took off in the 80s with hip hop,
right,
is the ability to take real sounds out in the world and then apply the same kind of techniques by mapping it onto a keyboard or other interfacing device. You can see the guys who use those big large button things, and they just hit buttons, pads and stuff. So
yeah.
Exactly.
Really...
creating a sampler out of your friend's sounds, that sounds cool. That's right up the way you write, the way you've been wanting to write electronic music for the longest time.
Well, in fact, like my brother and I were talking about making a David Colma drum set. And whatever the fuck that even means, but we're talking about for this next project. That was one of the things I want to get more into electronic music, and like real electronic music.
Sure.
And it's just one of those things where it's like it would be so cool to have the cast of this next project be sampled within the instrumentalists. Yeah, so very, very, very cool stuff. The other thing that was so cool about hanging out with Todd was learning about some of the ins and outs of the electronic music world. For instance, he's friends with the people who literally made Max MSP and made Ableton. He's friends with the person who made Audacity. But there's something you might be interested in, David, there's a new music writing software that I don't know if it's in its beta phase or it just ended its beta phase, but Todd has the free trial right now. It's called Dorico. Have you heard of this?
Dorico, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So Dorico is the people who all got let go by Sibelius when Avid decided to not update the program almost ever again. And so the people those are the people who created the notation software that we all use. A lot of people use. Dorian and I both use it. And Dorico is them building a new and better one. It's missing it doesn't have some important functionality, but it's slowly building on new ones. So but it's got more things than Sibelius has right now already.
Right.
But it's missing some of the important basics. Last time I checked, like a year ago.
The gist I learned about Dorico, what it's going through, was basically the old company that owned Sibelius put a lot of restrictions. They didn't throw a lot of money at them because they were putting all their money in recording software, and it's one of those. I mean, it makes perfect sense in a capitalist system. That you would go for DJs are gonna be spent. There's a lot more DJs than composers who are notating. So
that's also the reason why Sibelius got progressively worse, is that they made it more functional for people who don't know how to read music.
Right. But I guess these programmers went to Steinberg, and Steinberg just was like, "Fuck it, do what you want." And so Dorico is actually the dream of what the head programmer is looking to do. It's like he finally has the freedom to do it, which is very cool.
That's wonderful. I've been planning on buying that program at the point, but I was going to wait until it got to the certain set of things that I needed to do, like the printable parts and
exactly.
There's a bunch of stuff. I don't know how. The last time I looked was like a year ago, so I'm sure there are new functions since the last time I looked. But yeah,
right.
No, I've been aware of that for a long time because Sibelius has a set of problems that I can't stand. But it's better than Finale in terms of the way it's just able to work. And by the way, I know how to use Finale. I had to learn how to use it, so it's like I know how to use both programs. But it's just
right.
I would really much rather have a different option. That might be the one. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a blast hanging out with Todd. He's somebody I'd love to have on the podcast one day just to talk to him about just about what his life's been like and who he knows and all that kind of stuff. We had a lot of conversations about psychedelic drugs, which were fun.
Oh yeah, right. So it's like talking to John Sanborn then.
Yeah. Well, actually, to talk about John Sanborn, Todd reminds me of a calm John Sanborn.
Oh my goodness.
They even look kind of the same, and their voices sound kind of the same.
Okay.
But where John, my impression of John is ah!
Yeah, pretty much.
My impression of Todd is nice to meet you.
Yeah.
but they're almost the same personality in different directions.
By the way, if anybody listening to this doesn't know who John Sanborn is, he's the amazing video artist who helped Robert Ashley make Perfect Lives, which Dorian and I have play and make ourselves. And John helped us make our own opera pilot, and he's also been making operas with Dorian, like video operas with Dorian. And you're in the middle of a very long-term project at the moment.
Yeah, so long that I went to Todd Reynolds' house to learn how to do electronic music.
Right.
To start to really dig into this upcoming opera.
So I have a question for you, Dorian. Earlier in this conversation, you said want to be able to do real electronic music. What do you mean by real in that context?
What I mean is there was a point in my life when the keyboard I had, my performing instrument, was a Casio WK1600. And now I play a Yamaha MM8. And even though I love the Casio, the Casio is not the best quality of keyboard for the level of music. And I'm not saying, like, there are people who use lo-fi and low-budget instruments that do amazing work, but for the kind of music I'm interested in, I needed a higher grade of a keyboard. Sure. And that's basically the point for this next phase in electronic music. I've been a GarageBand and Audacity kind of person, partially for practical reasons. They're free programs,
right? It's not like you're running around with lots of money to spend on Logic or
right.
Yeah.
Well, and but I mean also aesthetic reasons, because a lot of my music in particular is sort of aimed at the working class, or the I hate saying it like this, but the proletariat or the peasant class. I try to sort of highbrow, lowbrow entertainment, if that makes any sense. And so there's an aesthetic choice that's been made in past pieces of utilizing free software, free open source software. Now that being said, this upcoming project, there's some ideas that I want to do that are just not possible in GarageBand and Audacity. For instance, I want to have the entire rhythm section plugged into a program and have sounds being changed while we improvise together.
Oh, yeah, right. But you're not going to be able to do that in Audacity.
No. But you can in Ableton. You're going to need
Ableton or Max MSP or something to be able
exactly.
to do something like that.
Well, yeah. and also things like just the creating of samples is a different thing.
Right.
You can just go deeper in Ableton than you can in Audacity or GarageBand.
Right, of course, because that's the thing, is that the kind of things you're describing are things that Ableton was designed to do.
Exactly.
Audacity has basically been designed for example, for us to be able to record the audio that we're recording right now.
Right.
And then we can make modifications to it and edit it. And there are some interesting effects that we can add. I mean, we've made an entire album in Audacity before, that weird living room album we did. But we couldn't do a thing where we're like modifying the sounds we're currently making in real time in that software.
Right.
It doesn't have that functionality.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by real electronic music.
Okay. Well, because in the end, Dorian, I mean, it's not like any of the electronic music that either you or I or anybody else has been making isn't real in that way.
Correct.
But
English language is such a fascinating language. Especially for somebody like me who never thinks before they talk. So
right. Well, thinking is overrated sometimes.
Yes, exactly. So So another element of the Todd Reynolds trip, and I wanted to talk to you about this, David. So Heinel and I, it was up in a very conservative part of Massachusetts, and it's just, It's been interesting, this time period we're living in, because I really do take a serious approach to interacting with people I disagree with on the political spectrum. And interacting with them civilly, and interacting with them, as human beings, and even like with a subtle attempt on trying to just push them gently nudge them in another direction, which has varying pieces, varying effects. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it was just mind blowing to be up in this area in Massachusetts, which is it's a very meth addict heavy place. There's a huge opioid problem up there. I'm gonna botch these numbers, but I guess the population used to be like 46,000, something like that, and I don't even remember the industry it was. It was some factory industry or something.
Was it a textiles or something?
I don't know, because I basically heard this part only once from Todd. Sure. But the population basically went from 40,000 to 13,000 or 1,300. I think 13,000.
That's been the story of rural America in the 20th century.
Yeah. And it's just the standard tragic American working class story. But the other thing that comes along with that is very bizarre reactionary politics that I don't quite understand where they come from. And so on our way back home, we were listening to the radio, just the local talk radio, and there was an interview with a local host and Michele Bachmann, and
everyone's favorite.
God. What?
I said everyone's favorite.
Yeah. Well, dude, ugh. It was gross, some of the stuff that she was saying. I'm all about people being able to express themselves or express their concerns, even when I find their beliefs horrific. But she was I can't tell if she's completely ignorant and in her head, or if she's blatantly lying, or if it's a mix of all of the above. I don't know. What do you think? Just before getting into this,
whether or not Michele Bachmann is stating what she actually thinks.
Right.
My guess is that it's a fair amount of it is that.
Yeah.
Some of it's pandering. Some of it's doing what the people who pay her money want her to say. But but keep in mind, Dorian, that the way that the capitalist system works is it finds the people who already are inclined to do those things.
Right.
And they gladly take on those roles. It's not very many people who get to that level that are like, I don't believe any of this shit, but I do this for the money, right? The only person who's doing that is what's his name? Dave Rubin.
Dave Rubin, or maybe like Milo Yiannopoulos to a degree.
Yeah, something like that, right? But almost everybody else, especially the politicians, I mean, they tend to believe at least a portion of what they're doing.
Right.
It might not be the things that make them the most popular, right? Because in a certain sense, right-wing social issues are less of an issue for, say, your traditional right-wing elite, who they don't give a damn about abortion. They just want to make sure the rich people have all the money.
Right.
But Michele Bachmann has a groundswell support that lifted her into the spotlight in public office when she was there. Right. And so she tends to be more of an ideologue. Right? When she ran for president, she was one of the crazy people that the Republican Party was trying to keep out from becoming the nominee. Right? Along the lines of Herman Cain or oh my God, Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, yes.
Right. I mean, they're very different kinds, but it's that very specific, like, not going to do that, right? And it just so happened that over 3 cycles, they failed the most recent time to keep the crazy person from winning. I'm saying crazy in the from the point of view of the Republican elite that try and fail to control the party.
Right.
Okay. So
so some of the shit that they were saying, like, first off, I mean, I'll just jump into this one. She was like, and their number 1 candidate right now, Elizabeth Warren, who's a Marxist. She's a Marxist. Oh, you don't believe me? I encourage every one of the readers to go and download the Communist Manifesto. I'm screwing this up. Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx, and you will just read everything that the Democrats stand for now. They just want free stuff. So that's the thing, man. It's like, I can't tell how serious she is. Because if she had ever read the Communist Manifesto, she would never think, aha, the modern Democratic Party.
Yeah. Or she would never call Elizabeth Warren a Marxist.
Right.
There's an important 2 things going on, right? There's the whole likelihood that she's never read it and it's a talking point that she's been fed, or that she's heard in the ether, and because basically the Republicans and farther to the right basically paint everyone to their left as a Marxist.
Right.
Right. It's the way to talk about, instead of talking about Bolsheviks, we talk about Marxists, right? So Marxism just means awful ideas that left-wing people in the Democrats and farther to the left have. They don't know what a Marxist is. We know what a Marxist is.
Right.
And and we're not Marxists. I
mean, I have Marxist tendencies, but I'm
right.
Not,
of course.
I'm not
what I mean is like. It's like we're more like Chomsky, who specifically doesn't identify himself as a Marxist, right?
Right.
I mean, but the idea is that that's the problem is that the definition of Marxist on the left also has some problems, which why certain anarchist-leaning people try to sort of separate themselves ideologically from it.
Right.
Because on the left it still has the connections to Mao and Stalin.
Well, it's the Marxist-Leninist.
Right, exactly, that kind of
writings.
Stuff. If we're talking about like Marx, his own ideas, and the striving for the socialist, communist freedom, and collective solidarity. I mean, it's like, of course.
Yeah, like the Richard Wolff look at
exactly.
At
like Wolff is one of the most important people I pay attention to.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Marxist, straight up, but he frames it specifically as the socialist experiment has been ongoing for, 150 years?
Right.
And it has had some notable successes and some god-awful things happen because they attempted to take over the state. And they didn't replace the hierarchy of power. In the workplace. And so Wolff is advocating for making the workplace democratic as a form of social reform. And that in and of itself is a Marxist way of thinking. But it's a completely different thing than whatever the fuck the states that called themselves quote unquote Marxist in the 20th century have done in the past or are currently attempting to do in this century.
Right. Well, I mean, just to put it on the reverse side, when Donald Trump became president, I went out of my way to read a lot of fascist literature, just to grasp what was happening within the American system, and I read Mussolini's Manifesto of Fascism, and you will find out that Donald Trump is not a fascist. He has fascistic tendencies. And he's definitely participating in some form of fascism, but he himself is not a fascist ideologue. And the thing that I found so disturbing about this Michele Bachmann thing She spoke as if Elizabeth Warren was a Marxist, as if it was a complete, objective fact.
Right. Because, it's like, it assumes, one, that being a Marxist is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, it isn't. Just almost any other word we can use for identity.
Well, I mean, Marxist-Leninism versus Marxist-humanism are completely different. They have the same core, anti-capitalist tendencies, but their approaches are thoroughly different.
This has been a split in socialist thought since Marx, in his lifetime, during the Internationals. I mean, come on, this is a structural thing about leftist thought, and she's completely unaware of it. Yeah,
completely.
Of course. Why would she? Why? There is no benefit to anyone on the right actually learning what left-wing people think. There's no structure. The structure of our society is designed to keep left-wing thought out of the media. It's designed to keep it away from people. Mm-hmm. I mean, because who does right-wing ideology benefit?
The people in power.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And left-wing ideology does not. It is specifically aimed at redistributing power, not just money, power.
Right. Even authoritarian leftism, that was the end goal.
Right. And they were just using... Yeah. The problem is that they were using the right-wing arm of the state as a method to do so, which is why it ended in pogroms and, horrible... Like the Great Leap Forward is one of the most ironic statements ever devised in human history.
Right.
I mean, just like, it's like no one's sitting here celebrating Mao for murdering people. But it's important to recognize that, at the same time, the level of economic growth that happened during that time is so gargantuan that this idea that Elizabeth Warren herself even advocates that capitalism is the best means we have of generating economic growth. Right. That's just clearly not true.
Right.
State socialism, planned economies generate way more growth. They just happen to involve a lot of state-sanctioned murder of millions of people. Right? The capitalism makes that murder an externality.
Oh yeah, no, the murder in capitalism is the same in numbers. It's just not to the local people.
Right, here's the thing:
it's not to the nation's residents.
So people like Elizabeth Warren, who is clearly not a Marxist, will sit down and say that capitalism is better and we need to fix it because capitalism is she's just spouting ideology that capitalism is better.
Right.
I mean, so the idea that she's a Marxist is just ridiculous on its face. I mean, it's just like as if So there's no I mean. Did William Buckley even know anything? I don't know. I haven't read much Buckley, but
actually,
the intellectual right-wing guy of the 20th century in America who had television shows and radio programs and wrote in the National Review. He had this huge media thing. I mean, how much did he know about any of this?
Right.
I mean, I'm skeptical. I'll look it up.
Well, so another thing she said that was pretty mind altering. My poor wife was in the car with us, and she was just hearing this, going like, "What is she talking about?" And of course it's like, this is just kind of what these really radical conservatives. This is just the stuff they say. But another thing Bachmann said. When she talked about how Hillary Clinton was completely influenced in her Marxist ideology based on Saul Alinsky and his Rules for Radicals, which was dedicated to Lucifer. And and so, I read Rules for Radicals maybe 10 years ago. So I barely remember the book at this point. But so I looked up the Snopes part, and it was Rules for Radicals is kind of written as a comedy. There's a lot of sarcasm, a lot of silliness in it. One of the things I remember him writing about was, if they show up with machine guns, you like spray them with silly string, like that kind of stuff. Well, so here's what Snopes has to say about, did Saul Alinsky dedicate Rules for Radicals to Lucifer? And it says, Saul Alinsky made a literary allusion to Lucifer as the first radical known to man in an epigraph to his book, Rules for Radicals. And so it says, it's mostly false. What's true? Saul Alinsky wrote an epigraph describing the rebellious angel Lucifer as the first radical known to man in his book, Rules for Radicals. What's false? Alinsky did not dedicate Rules for Radicals to Lucifer. Origin. On July 19th, 2016, oh God, this is where it comes from. Are you ready for this, David?
Go ahead.
Former presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson,
Oh God.
yeah, gave a speech before the Republican National Convention in which he claimed that Rules for Radicals author Saul Alinsky, who said is greatly admired by Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, acknowledged Lucifer on the dedication of the book. So here's the quote. Now, one of the things that I have learned about Hillary Clinton is that one of her heroes, her mentors, Saul Alinsky, and her senior thesis was about Saul Alinsky. This was someone she greatly admired, and that affected all of her philosophies subsequently. Now, interestingly enough, let me tell you something about Saul Alinsky. Dude, why do we do this to ourselves? All right. He wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. On the dedication page, it acknowledges Lucifer, the original radical who gained his own kingdom. Now think about that. This is a nation where our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, talks about certain inalienable rights that come from our Creator. A nation where our Pledge of Allegiance says we are one nation under God, which I need to add that was added in 1953.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're already like fucking wrong, Mr. Carson. But anyways, this is a nation where every coin in our pocket and every bill in our wallet says, "In God we trust." So
again, that was a creation of money, federal. Okay, sorry.
So are we willing to elect someone as president who has as their role model somebody who acknowledges Lucifer? Think about that. All right, so then Snopes continues. While it's true that one of the three epigraphs on an introductory page, not a dedication page, of Rules for Radicals characterizes Lucifer as the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment, the book is neither dedicated to Lucifer, nor it be read as an endorsement of devil worship or Satanism, despite what Carson seems to have implied. This is the epigraph in question. So, alright, this is the whole fucking thing that Saul wrote. Lest we forget, at least over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical, from all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which. The first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. So then Snopes continues. The name Lucifer appears nowhere else in the book, nor does the name Satan. The word devil is used several times, but only in the generic sense of enemy. By contrast, there are many references to Christianity, particularly early Christianity, the adherents of which Alinsky characterizes as revolutionary and compares to the young radicals of his own time. The book was published in 1971. And though Alinsky's book is a paean to neither Satanism nor Christianity, he does claim his principles rest on Judeo-Christian values. All right, so now this is another quote from Saul. Believing in people, the radical has the job of organizing them so that they will have the power and opportunity to best meet each unforeseeable future crisis as they move ahead in their eternal search for those values of equality, justice, freedom, a deep concern for the precociousness of human life, and all those rights and values propounded by Judeo-Christianity and the democratic political tradition. Democracy is not an end, but the best means towards achieving these values. This is my credo for which I live, and if need be, die.
Just, so is it preciousness of human life? Rather than precociousness?
In let me look it up.
You just read?
Yeah. Oh, yep. It's
yeah.
Preciousness of human life.
Okay,
yep.
Good. I just wanted to
Yep. Yeah, no,
okay.
I'm a bad reader.
Yeah, right. No, yeah. So it's like, okay, so Saul Alinsky literally just saying, I don't know, normal leftist bromides. I mean,
right.
That's what everybody thinks. I mean, hell, even probably Michele Bachmann agrees with half of what he said.
Right.
like, that's the funny thing. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the funny... Again, it's like... The bringing up of Saul Alinsky is like the thing they did with Jeremiah Wright when Obama was running for president. Right? So Jeremiah Wright is this amazing African-American preacher, pastor, scholar in the Chicago area, and Obama apparently went to his church. And they painted Obama as some radical because in the midst of a sermon that they ridiculously excerpted, they made Jeremiah Wright look like he was damning America, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, just this whole idea that somehow, first of all, consider to think that Barack Obama agrees with his which is much more radical pastor. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Right. Based on Barack Obama's actions, he has nothing to do with Jeremiah Wright. I've watched talks given by Jeremiah Wright. He's amazing. So it's like the idea that somehow, oh my God, Hillary Clinton wrote her dissertation, wrote a thesis about Saul Alinsky. I'm sure. So the standard practice in writing scholarly work in college is that you both note the good things that you agree with and also the bad things that you don't like. So I'm almost positive that Hillary Clinton lists things she doesn't like about Saul Alinsky's work in that thesis, because that's what you do when you write things like that.
Right.
So the idea that she's somehow he's her mentor is just ridiculous. Anyway, based upon Saul Alinsky's life and hers, who would you rather be involved with, Dorian? It's
exactly.
just I mean, it just is there's no contest.
Right.
It's Alinsky.
I mean, just let's put this in our kind of and first off, it grosses me out that people like you and I are here defending Hillary Clinton right now.
Right.
But we're not defending Hillary Clinton. We're just defending actual real life.
Right. It's just so the expectations of this right-wing claptrap make Hillary Clinton look like this ridiculously left-wing person, which she clearly isn't.
Right. Well,
she is a center-right technocrat.
Yes.
Who has done some wonderful things for children and disabled children in her work as First Lady and other eras of her political career, but at the same time has been the person supporting the coup in Honduras. I mean, it's just it's there's some really awful things about her too, but it's this idea that she's somehow this it's basically, Dorian, if you've ever looked at any of the polling information about what's the best thing for local congressional candidates to bring up when making advertising to damn their opponent. It's not their opponent. It's not the fact that they're Democrats. The person you bring up is Nancy Pelosi. Which of you and I are not fans of.
No, not in the slightest.
Right, exactly. But the easiest thing to do in a congressional race for people running for Congress is to say that this person will answer to Nancy Pelosi if you elect them. Wow. And that paints them into a corner, because then they're stupid enough to either defend or defame Nancy Pelosi, which is just a ridiculous thing, because that's not how Congress works. I mean,
correct.
So it's like, I mean, there are ways in which she has influence. Like, for example, she's the one, she can decide whether or not impeachment moves forward at any given time, right?
You're right.
So with this crazy shit with Ukraine that I'm not paying attention to,
dude,
I mean, she's finally moved forward with this idea.
The Ukraine stuff I find, not shocking at all.
Sure.
Thing about the current Donald Trump bullshit that's actually like affecting me pretty personally, like internally, is the shit he's doing right now with Syria and the Kurds.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah, that. Now Kirsten told me about that.
This is some human rights like shit. It's the world is not a world of black and whites. It's a lot of gray area.
Right.
And if there was one issue that I give the most shit about, it would be anti-war policies. Like that's probably the number one focus, just on my own thought. And for the most part, I'm anti-U.S. intervention with international affairs, especially military intervention. The Kurds are fighting ISIS and have asked for U.S. aid. And that's when Trump decides to pull out.
Of course.
It's like, dude,
well,
it's like, this is the 1% area that I might be pro-U.S. intervention, and we're not doing it.
So there's a perfectly logical way to support that, and it's that when the people who have the democratic control of an area say to somebody on the outside, please help us maintain our political and life integrity, and if you don't, we will all be murdered by not just ISIS but also the Turks, the
right.
Turkey, Erdogan. I mean, it's just going to be there is room for that kind of thing. Of course, we'd much rather live in a world where the United States didn't have the opportunity to, fuck with other countries.
Right.
But we also live in a world in which if the United States gets out of those things, we will be guaranteed deaths upon deaths upon deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, because who else is going to fucking defend the Kurds?
I know.
I mean, them, but I mean, how much power do they have? The thing is, that's the historical.
My God, yeah, exactly.
The historical history, the history of all of the Kurdish people is being carved into multiple minority populations in multiple countries in the Middle East, so that they've been having to fight for their lives for at least 100 years, and just
I know.
I get really angry.
Well. Let's, because we are coming to the end of this. I did just want to. We'll see next time we talk where the Kurdish situation is.
It'll be worse.
Oh, I know it's going to be worse. But just we can talk about that in the next episode.
Sure.
But just to bring it back to kind of finish off the Michele Bachmann thing, and these strange allegations made against Hillary Clinton for being Saul Alinsky is her mentor. I was trying to think of it in a reverse setting. All right, who is somebody who has influenced me that could definitely be brought up in left-wing circles, like an author. Not even like a friend, but who's an author who has affected my life in a particular way that I definitely pick and choose, some of their writing, and could be brought up in left-wing circles. And I thought of Sam Harris.
Sure.
The meditation practice that I do was from a book that Sam Harris wrote called Waking Up. It was before I really knew a lot of, some of his views on Islam, and before I knew about... before he had done the thing with Charles Murray, and before he lost the battle with Noam Chomsky.
He doesn't even think of it as a loss.
I know! It's amazing. But anyways, he on his world, he's a great neuroscientist and a great meditation teacher. And he wrote a very, very concise book using a neurological view on meditation. And he recommended the Vipassana technique, which is something I use to this day. I meditate every day for about 10 minutes. I go to a retreat every year. And that is straight up from Sam Harris's writing. And it would be like me getting involved in some kind of political movement, beyond street level activism, and somebody being like, he's not really left wing. One of his mentors was Sam Harris, a known Islamophobe.
Yes, a known Islamophobe.
Yeah, like something just completely ridiculous. Because in the world of Islamophobia, Sam Harris isn't even like the same level. It's
Dorian. Yeah, it's even easier than Sam Harris.
Yeah.
Louis C.K.
Oh, yes, perfect.
Bill Cosby.
Yep.
Kirsten was telling me about the allegations that have come out about a tell-all book about Matt Lauer. Not that either of us are influenced by the fucking Today Show host, but literally raping people. Well, I mean, it's just it's this kind of stuff. It's like people in certain powerful situations will generally abuse the power. So it's almost impossible that you're not going to find anybody that is scot-free of social problem.
Right.
I mean, Martin Luther fucking King. I shouldn't say it that way. Martin Luther King Jr. He was he cheated on his wife.
Oh yeah.
And the FBI tried to use that as a way to get him to commit suicide. I mean, or Gandhi was racist. I mean, it's like, does that mean that we shouldn't listen to Gandhi about, non-interventionist techniques for that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just like, so it's the fact is that there's nobody that's going to be scot-free, and definitely not you and me.
Oh yeah,
so
we have recordings on the internet of us performing really, really offensive shit years ago.
Right.
Yes. That I personally refuse to take down because I want people to know about them.
Sure.
I'm not going to post links. You can find them yourself, but...
There you go. That won't be in the show notes, apparently.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just... So, even if people are influenced by Saul Alinsky, okay. Yeah, it was like, well, Dorian, do you like Wagner's music?
I sure do.
Right. Wagner is so loathsome as a human.
Here's a good one.
Yeah.
Igor Stravinsky.
Yeah, there you go. He liked Mussolini.
Yeah, he supported Mussolini.
Right. Okay, so Dorian, if you were going to be on a side in the Russian Revolution in the 1917, would you be a white Russian or a red Russian?
Well, I would have been a red Russian, but I probably would have fallen into the black Russians.
Right. Guess what?
But yeah.
Stravinsky was a white Russian.
Exactly.
It's like, so it's like, yeah. No, I get, yeah. Exactly. So it's like, one of the most important composers of the 20th century is just, or Schoenberg. I mean, Schoenberg is a Jewish man, but he wanted to advocate for the supremacy of German music for the next 1,000 years with his 12-tone system. I mean, it's like the level of tribalist bullshit that is. And it didn't work, by the way.
Right.
Thank goodness. Luckily, it was only composing. But it has had a huge influence on the way that music is taught in universities, which is a real problem for these very same reasons.
Right.
Because we still live in a world where right-wing crazy nutjobs like Richard Spencer can go take music classes and think that white people made all the art that was good.
Right.
And then he can go around spouting his identitarian bullshit, which is straight out of fucking Wagner, and lie that he is somehow influenced by feminists when he's just getting his ideas from the bigots of 100 years ago.
Right.
So it's like, fuck this. Anyway, That's probably enough for the today.
Well, we are now at the hour mark. So,
Yeah.
anyways, thank you all for listening. This is Trysteropod. My name is Dorian Wallace, and this is David Colma. We're composers, and fucking join the revolution. Peace.
See you next time.